It's interesting how something so unremarkable as reloading a gun in a first-person shooter was such a cool feature back in the late 90s and early 2000s. At least, to me it was. My high school brain was vividly impressed with how slick the reloading looked when I first played Perfect Dark on the Nintendo 64. While I had played Doom before on the old-school iMac, my experience from first-person shooters came largely from playing N64 titles, the obvious example being Perfect Dark's spiritual predecessor, GoldenEye 007. And in GoldenEye, the guns didn't reload in that cool way like they did in Perfect Dark. They just went off screen and returned with more ammo. Which brings me to today's backlog game, Darkwatch. I mean, check out the reloading on these guns. Developed by High Moon Studios and published by Capcom, Darkwatch is a game that I always wanted to try. I remember seeing this game via Classic Game Room around the time I graduated college in 2008.
Game Room, there's a lot of first-person shooters on the PlayStation 2, but few are as much fun as this. It's Darkwatch from 2005.
It's interesting because Darkwatch came out in the twilight of the original Xbox in 2005, the same year the Xbox 360 released. I think, as Mark from CGR commented, and I'm sure a sentiment that others shared, it was like this game came out and went with so little notice during those transitional years.
Man, where was this game in 2005? Did anyone else ever hear of it? Darkwatch? I mean, admittedly, I was living under a rock back then. I still am. It's a nice rock.
The game isn't necessarily rare. Funny enough, there are quite a few copies of Darkwatch available on eBay. So earlier this year, I finally fulfilled my 16-year interest in the game and I purchased one. I had to even dig out my Xbox 360 to play the game, as this was one of the few OG Xbox backwards compatible games, and I no longer own the original Xbox. The game's graphics are serviceable for the time, with a color palette resembling the typical FPS fare of the era. The guns certainly look great, and the enemies have some cool designs, particularly the skeleton types. The humans look as you'd expect from a 2005 Xbox game. However, one area that really shines is the sound design. I must admit that when I played Darkwatch, I usually did so with the volume pretty low. I played the game over the course of a few weeks, late at night, usually after my family went to bed. I would also likely be watching a YouTube video as well, or listening to a podcast, so I missed out on all of this. The weapons, the enemies, the overall gothic horror all lend to an auditory experience that I clearly missed out on during my playthrough. And I only came to realize this when I started editing my footage. Regarding the gameplay, Darkwatch, in a loose way, reminds me of Castlevania if you replaced whips with guns and set it in a 3D world. And it just exudes style. Although some of the style is kind of cringe, if I'm being honest. Throughout the game, you fight off all forms of undead demons and underworld creatures, including scythe-wielding skeletons, zombie-like snipers, banshees, this guy. You play through a fairly linear campaign, with the only real variety in gameplay being finding souls that need to be rescued from their torment. In recent years, many first-person shooters have begun to drift away from the Halo-esque only carry two weapons aspect. I remember that being pretty innovative at the time. However, playing Darkwatch, I only felt myself annoyed that I couldn't carry more than 3 guns. I guess the boomer shooters have all had an influence on my current taste in first-person shooters. That said, there really are not a ton of weapons to choose from. Most of the time, I would resort to a shotgun because it packed what felt like the best punch. There's a rifle, a sniper rifle, a set of handguns, the cool-looking pistol, which was cool, but also didn't always work all the time. There's a rocket launcher. That's kind of it. There's also a truck you can drive for at least one level. Video games and first-person shooters in general have certainly evolved since the days of Darkwatch, so don't really expect a ton of innovation when it comes to the gameplay. You shoot, pick up weapons, shoot some more, rescue a soul, watch a cutscene, go back to shooting, finish a level, rinse and repeat. and for the experience that I had with Darkwatch, that was just fine. I think it was worth the 16-year wait, and I recommend anyone who wanted to give this a shot, go check it out.